Hello everyone, welcome to today's Vitocrossal 300 CU3A Control Navigation and Service online seminar. My name is Miranda Getling and I'm the Viessmann Academy Manager. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to say welcome and thank you for attending today. I also wanted to take this opportunity to introduce you to your instructor, Jay Sheldon. And for those that may not know him, Jay has been with Viessmann for the last 5 years. The first 3 years, he was a member of the Technical Service Department before moving into his current role as the Academy Training Instructor. Jay has a master license and has been in the heating and cooling industry for the past 30 years, including holding job titles as General Manager, Service Manager, and owner of his own company for 14 of those years. And before Jay begins, we do have a few housekeeping items to go over. The first is everyone will stay muted throughout the entire seminar. However, you do have the ability to ask any questions through the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You will see the desktop laptop version on the left, and then on the right is the mobile device version. So you can simply click on this button and type in your questions throughout the entire seminar. Jay will be stopping about halfway and at the end of the presentation to answer any questions submitted. We are recording this presentation and it will be up on the video library within the next 2 weeks or so. And we also will be posting it once you get to there. There's two sections actually, sorry. There's the video library up top and at the bottom. And when you get in there, we have the search function up top. And then we have the recorded online seminar section in the drop down. So you can simply click into that section. You can also click into the Vitocrossal 300 CU3A section as well, or you can type in keywords up top. And then you can go back and rewatch this at any time, including all of our other online seminars we had this year. It's also on our YouTube channel, the Viessmann North America. So you go to youtube.com, type in Viessmann North America. You can find this presentation and any other presentations that we've recorded and other videos we have on our YouTube channel. And with that being said, let's begin. Here is Jay Sheldon.
Thanks for joining us, and hopefully you can pick up a few tips for the cleaning the boiler today, as well as the control navigation. And like Miranda said, I'll be stopping each slides at the halfway point on each one that I'm doing here today. So I'll be stopping a couple of times, but if you forget your questions, and at the end, Miranda will put up our email for any more questions if you remember them after you left today's training. Again, this is for licensed contractors or for people that are learning how to service boilers. So today we're going to go over the symbols on the controls itself. I'll go over the importance of the correct times and dates with this control, because it's things that we can do and see with this control. You're going to find that this control can help you a lot even in your troubleshootings. I'll show you the way to access your fault history as well. And we'll go over your effects of your heating curve and how to adjust them a little bit as well. So let's get started. And remember, don't hesitate to ask questions. If you have questions before you even come, put them in there and we'll answer them. So looking at the CU3A and the control, if you do any work with the 200 boilers, no different with this control here, just a different boiler. That's more or less, it's this one here, as you can see, is the KW6B. That means that the B stands for it's on the boiler. Just like our CM2 commercial boiler, the GW6B, it means it's on the boiler. So not much difference in the 200s. It's the KW6C, which is in the cabinet. So they made a major improvement since I've started working on these boilers. When they came into the country, maybe almost 30 years ago now, I guess. And so everything used to come in Celsius and no Fahrenheit at all. So we've really what we call Americanized the boiler for us here. Just to talk a little bit about the CU3A before we get into it is this boiler has actually been around for quite some time now. So it has a very well proven track record. So if you haven't put one of these in, to me, this is the Cadillac of the boilers here that we sell. And it's a high mass boiler. So it's different from a low mass boiler, which is your wall hung boilers. And this here is a high mass boiler. So just think of your short cyclings and things like that. If you're using a towel warmer and you have just a small towel warmer, and this boiler might not even fire because of the high mass of water content in it. So less wear and tear on the boilers. So looking at the front of the control there, you're looking at, you would have to lift up the cover here. So this actually slides out and lifts up. So this, it's like a laptop, but it actually slides out and then you fold it down and then slides into the box. So everything's closed, and if you want to work on it, you lift it up. To get into your reset button and your on and off buttons behind this Viessmann here. You're going to kind of lift up a little bit. It's a little tricky if you've never done it before. Just lift up a tad on the bottom and then fold down this, and that Viessmann will fold down. So it kind of looks like this here. This is more the newer control here. So here's your reset button here with the R on it, and then the lights on in between the V there. You got your lightning bolt that we've always had. So if you have a fault on this boiler, you're going to have a lightning bolt here, and the red light's going to be flashing. Green is all operation good. And if you do use our OptiLink here, it plugs into the middle here, and that's for it comes with this boiler. That's for the homeowner to make any type of adjustments on their boiler. They do need to have Wi-Fi with that, but it does come with the boiler, so they can make changes with their domestic temperature, or if they want to do the holiday program, if they're leaving and they want it to go off when they leave, or reduce down, or come back on when they come home, they can do that as well. Reset button, it's just a button that's sticking out there, and then your on and off button. So you're lifting up that cover there as well. Just to go over the control buttons here and the navigations of the buttons themselves and the keys and what they do. Your top one here is just to return to the previous screen. Your left, right, up, down arrows are your navigation keys. And then make sure if you're making any program changes or doing any programming changing, you hit OK. So it acknowledges your changes, so it will store it in its memories. If you're looking at something on the screen, you don't understand quite what it means, you hit that question mark, and on most of the things, it's going to tell you kind of what you're looking at. And then your menu key is to get into all your different sub menus on the very bottom here. When you do push that menu key at the very bottom, the menu does come up, and then you're going to see these menus come up on your screen. Heating, zone circuits, domestic, and these where you would go in and see how they're operating. So to break that sub menu down, and when you hit that menu button, these are your sub menus that are going to pop up here when you click on them. So if you hit your menu button here, 3 lines on the very bottom of the control there, and then you click OK on heating, you can see there's a sub menu for heating. If you're using zone circuits menu will come up, and then you can see what's going on with each zone circuit, what your heating curves are for each zone circuit, or what your fixed set point is for each zone circuit as well. If you had solar hooked up to the boiler, you could see your solar. If you don't have our solar control hooked up to the boiler, you're not going to see anything up there. The test mode, that's if you get on the job site, you get in there and you want to see the boiler fire, just go to that test mode, you hit the test mode button, hit OK, and the boiler will fire for you, will call your pump on, and then run up to limit. The information button in your sub menu there is to see all your different things of what their actual set points and actual temperatures are. So say you went into the general one there and you want to see what your outdoor actual is, you would go there and see what the actual outdoor temperature is and what it's supposed to be, to make sure everything's driving my heating circuit 1 or whatever, and make sure everything's set up correctly. You can go right there really quick. Over into the heating menu here, I try to save that for later on here as well. We get a lot of questions on the party mode. We know like Germans like to drink a lot of beer, but that's not really what the party mode is for. The party mode is if you're running a reduced mode, because we can do that with this boiler. With the original style with this boiler here, if you are running constant circulation, which I've been doing for 22 years in my house, I have no thermostat, so I let the boiler do all the work. My room temperature set point is what I would adjust to have what I want that room to, or my house to heat to. Reduced or red room, as I always would say it in tech support, that's what I would get, the red room temperature set point. That's reduced room temperature. So if you want to set, it's like a night setback clock or a thermostat in your house. Instead of using a thermostat, you're using the boiler, and the boiler starts to reduce the boiler temperature on the boiler. Instead of at say you got at 7 o'clock, you want your thermostat to reduce down on a thermostat. What it's going to do is click off and then let it drop down to that temperature. If you're running it with this way here, it's going to slowly reduce the temperature of the boiler till we hit that temperature in the house that we're requiring. So what that party mode for is, to go back with that, is the party mode is if you are having a party at your house and you will do, say at 7 o'clock, want to go into reduce mode, which can also reduce your temperature of your water as well. That just kicks on the party mode and extends the regular operation for 8 hours. So that means you're just going to run a normal operation for 8 hours. After 8 hours, we revert back into the normal operation of reduced mode. Operating program, you can see here, there's a little sub menu. It's whether you're doing heating and domestic, or domestic only, or if you have it in standby mode. And what you're going to find with this boiler here, with if you're doing heating circuits, I'm sorry, zone circuits, not heating circuits. If you're doing zone circuits, you're going to see that when you go through the startup wizard, it actually puts it in the standby mode, because that there, when you're doing zone circuits, it's waiting for an end switch closure. So that's why it's put into the standby mode. It's still going to make you domestic with the number 5 sensor if you're using our number 5 domestic sensor. Holiday program or heating time program, that's where you would set your heating time programs on and off 4 times a day, 7 days a week. So just like a programmable thermostat, no different. Holiday program, I've used this in different applications, say like in, if you have our boilers in a church or something like that, and they only want to use it on certain days of the week. You can set your time programs to come on and off throughout the week, and then on their mass days or whatever, you can have it fire up. You can actually do that with the holiday program as well. But the holiday programs, more or less, holiday in Europe is vacation. So if you're going away on a vacation, you can set that in the holiday mode, have it reduced down to temperature, and then come on and have it all up and running when you get there. That app that you can put on your into the control, the homeowner can do that all from the app on their phone, as long as they have that Wi-Fi device hooked into the boiler. So they can make all those settings and changes with the control. The new exciting thing, by next year, we're going to have all this for contractors. So I always like to talk about this because of the limited people that are coming into the heating and cooling industry. The neat thing with this is going to be for the contractor. So if they do have a fault, you're going to get an alarm on your phone. It's going to show you where all your customers are with a green pin on the map. If you have a yellow one, that's telling you, hey, it's time to clean Mrs. Jones's boiler. And then if it's red, it's going to give you a warning that they have a fault on the boiler, what the fault is, and what part to bring with you. So exciting new things coming in the future, as well as they'll be able to shadow you from tech support with a camera that's in the boiler. So really cool things coming up in the near future here. On the left-hand side, I save that for last because if you have to make any changes, because you'll do all this in the startup wizard in the original. But important to me and for this boiler is to get the proper time and date. Language, they've eliminated a lot of the language, but there used to be a lot of different languages in here. And if I was working with different customers with different languages, I actually used to go down there just talk about their control a little bit and put it in their language so they could kind of understand what I was showing them. Contrast and brightness, that's for your dimming and your lights on your control itself. Your temperature of unit is that's where you, if You want to put it in Celsius, you can, but these boilers are defaulted for Fahrenheit now. So if you want to name a heating circuit, that's where you would go to name your heating circuit. Back to the main menu and then factory default settings. If you don't, like I said, if you don't have the things connected to the boiler, you will not see these things pop up on the control. Just like if you weren't doing domestic with this boiler and you don't put your number 5 domestic sensor into the boiler control, it's not going to look for domestic, so it's not going to show you domestic on your control either. Or even if you're going through the startup wizard, it won't ask you to set your domestic set point temperature if you don't have your number 5 sensor in there. If you put it in there and you don't want it, you have to go into programming and take it out. So set the time and date, and make sure the other thing I always talk about the time and date is you can do a lot of troubleshooting with the time and date because our fault codes come in with time and date. So I had one that every Wednesday the boiler kept faulting out, and we went into the fault history and we noticed that every Wednesday the boiler was faulting out, and so we wanted to see what was going on every Wednesday at the house. And what it was a generator starting up and cycling for its test mode, and the homeowner had put it in but never had the gas piping upgrade, so it was sucking the gas right out of the boiler. So a lot of things like that. I had another one where the electricity coming into the house on certain times, it was like 7 o'clock at night, was getting reduced down to like 70 volts coming into the house, and it was a weird phenomenon that was going on. So a lot of times the time and date, if you have it correct, can help you troubleshoot. So let's talk about heating curves a little bit. The neat thing with this boiler and the startup wizard control that's on there now is that you can have a thermostat connected to the boiler or to your zone control, and then still have this boiler modulate to the outdoor temperature. And this is why in my areas where we're getting all these rebates is because we're supposed to be putting out the outdoor reset control on the boiler. And that's why we're getting these nice rebates here in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, I think New Hampshire as well, is because we're supposed to be making this boiler more efficient. That's what these things are driving for. So I actually train people from National Grid, and they're going to start going out and looking to see if these things are on the boiler to make sure that the boiler's running efficient. So why not have a boiler that modulates to the outdoor temperature and create the boiler to run the way it should and condense. With our with our heating curves, you can actually watch the temperatures rise up and down along the slopes while you're making adjustments. So with the slope, that's your higher end temperatures and how fast you're going to shoot up that slope to the temperatures. A shift, I always explain it here because our boilers are all defaulted at 68 degrees normal room temperature. A shift is, say like an elderly person lives in this house, and at 68 degrees, 2 degrees above that is our warm weather shutdown. Warm weather shutdown is going to be your thermostat if you're using zone control, and if you're using heating circuit, it's going to be your outdoor temperature sensor. So thermostat for zone circuits, outdoor temperature shut off automatically when you're doing constant circulation. But the way I always explain that is it might be too cold at 70 degrees warm weather shutdown for the elderly, so you can make a shift at the bottom end of the scale and go up. So as you can see, I moved it up to 72 degrees. So that means that the boiler will shut off at 74 degrees. Just a little helpful hint. Or if you have any solar gain or anything like that, you can reduce that or at the lower end. So it's not going to get that temperature. The other thing I always like to talk about, even with, say you have hydro air and you don't want to go below a certain temperature, and you don't want to go above a certain temperature, you can put a minimum and a maximum there as well. So that means that, hey, I don't want to go below, say 140 or 120, and I don't want to go above 150 for hydro air. You're still going to follow that curve up and down the scale and still make it efficient, and it's still going to blow warmer air out. So shift. And as I always say, that stands for 0 Kelvin, not for okay, because when I used to ask what your shift was, I got okay, including myself saying that, and that actually stands for 0 Kelvin. So you can see how we get confused, and it looks like okay down there in that corner. So where do we want to set our heating curves to what we have for emitters in the house? So this is in our manual. I just added color to this, so just to break it up for you. And just to go back here once, just to explain our heating curves, if you don't understand what a 1.4 heating curve is, that means when the temperature drops 1 degree outside, our boiler water temperature goes up 1.4 degrees. That's how our heating curves work. So if you had a 2.0 over here, when the temperature dropped 1 degrees outside, our boiler temperature goes up 2 degrees. So it's just a little easier explanation of heating curves for you. So as you can see, we have A, B, and C here. We have A as our low temp, like radiant floor heat, in-floor heating. Medium temp can be like your cast iron radiators, Runtal radiators, things to that nature. And then our high temps, we're looking at fan coils, high output baseboard, things to that nature. So as you can see to the left, to the right here, these are starting points. So you might start here and it might find that it's too warm for the house, so you might drop that down a little bit. And then, so it just gives you where you should start. And most days at my house here, I'm at a 0.4 curve. So you can see the water temperatures that I got pretty much running through my house at certain times of the year. Just to show you on a scale how it works, and this chart is in our manual as well. So as you can see on the left-hand side, it's acting as our boiler water temperature, supply temperatures going out to your system. And just remember, you got Celsius and Fahrenheit here, so you don't mess up. Down and at the bottom there, we have the outdoor temperature. Sorry about that. So just for an example, and this is just for an example, just say we had a 1.0 heating curve that we picked out. So on a -4 day, as you can see, and this is an example just to kind of see how the scale works in the chart to help you kind of figure it out. So -4, if we follow that up to 1.0 and then follow that over, on that day, we're heating the house with 140-degree water. Once it warmed up to about 23 degrees outside, we follow that up to the scale. Look at that line with that black line. I just highlighted it red so you could see it better, but it's all black lines. Once you follow that up, you follow that over, and that day we're heating at 122 degrees. And then once we heat up to 50 degrees, now you can see we're heating the house with 95-degree water temperature. And I have done this with baseboard as well, and it does work. Just got to make sure you do the proper heat loss on the house and make sure you have enough radiation in the house. What I found here in Rhode Island and Massachusetts, that a lot of the houses were over radiated, and some rooms had way too much, and then they always wondering why that room was overheating. So we're about the halfway point with the control programming. And that's my favorite saying, because I'm one of those people that like to ask questions and learn. And it took me a long time to get to that point, even to talk in front of people. So don't ever hesitate, because it might help you out someday when you're stuck in the basement, to ask your questions.
It looks like we don't have any questions at this time, Jay.
All right, great. Hopefully you're picking up information or you're not falling asleep, either one. All right, so we'll move on here. Just to show you different coding examples here, and when you get into coding level 2. And some of these changes that are on here are just showing you how you can actually go into program and change your pumps. But when you do the startup wizard in the beginning, it's picking all these for you. But say you want to go back in there and make that 53, you made it a heating pump, and now you want to make it a recirculation pump for your domestic, which, by the way, we have a time program for your recirculation as well. So if you're doing recirculation in the house, you don't have to go out and buy those pumps with all the pins on there to put your time and your on and off times on there. You can hook your pump right up to the boiler, and it put times and dates into the programming for that recirculation as well. So just giving you some examples here. That 157 pump output, that's one of the pumps that you're going to choose when you go through the startup wizard. So if you want to change that as well, you can go in there as well. But there's when we go through the startup wizard, you're picking these pumps already. At DHW, if you wanted to adjust your set point, you're going to click OK on that menu here. Drive the menu, DHW, and then hit set point there. And then that's where you're going to put your domestic set point temperature. If you want it at 118, 120, whatever you want to put it at, that's where you're going to put it. But just make sure once you put that temperature in there, you hit OK, or it won't save that information. So if you want to do a time program, because you can do an individual heating program and you can do an individual domestic program, or you can have the domestic follow the heat time program. And as well, there's where your DHW recirculation time program is there as well. So that would be for your recirculation. So if you wanted to put a time program for recirculation, you could do that there as well. And we kind of touched base on the testing the boiler operation there already. That's just so you're going to go there, click on that, hit OK when it says boiler on. So as we were talking earlier, the information button, now you can see what I was talking about when you click on general. If you want to see the outdoor temperature, your boiler actual temperature, your run hours, your burners on and off hours, fuel consumption. So there's a lot of little neat things here as well. Burner run hours is pretty cool, or your total run hours for your burner. So here we go. Here's the startup wizard. So when you first initially start up this boiler as it's brand new, the power bar is going to come up here. First thing it's going to ask you is, do you want to keep it in American English? For years, we had to take it out of German and put it into English. Now it just you're just going to hit OK. Next thing it's going to ask you is set your time and date. So I kind of went over the importance of the time and date and how it can help you out with your time programs as well as your holiday programs. If you want to put it in Celsius, you can do that. And like I was saying earlier, if you do not have your DHW sensor hooked into the control, you're going to bypass this and go right into setting up your zone circuits. So if you click no zone circuits, that's going to put it into heating circuits. And that's more of the older style way of the constant circulation and heating circuits, or end switches with the heating circuits. The thing when you're doing end switches with heating circuits, you actually manually have to go into programming and set up only one temperature for all 3 heating circuits. Where zone circuits, you can have individual heating temperatures. So that's what it would look like with no zone circuits. This is the older style work. So you can see up here, it says HC1. So that's the older way. So you got a house here. the temperature, what you want the temperature to be adjusted into the house, and what the outdoor temperature is. If you do click on zone circuits, this is the menu that's going to come up. So now if you can see in the other corner of the control here, it says ZC2 or ZC1 or ZC3. So you're going to have a totally different menu. And if you make a mistake on this, there is a way to go in there and restart up the startup wizard and start right from scratch. And it's pretty simple to do as well. I have that coming up shortly here. So for an example here, I'm going to go over how to set up your control. And for the first one, we're going to just pick for zone circuit 1 or 2, a fixed set point, and 1 for an outdoor heating curve. So zone circuit 1, we're going to pick that, and we're going to see that the next thing it's going to ask, do we want a fixed set point or weather compensated? So fixed set point is say I just want to run up to 180 degrees. Weather compensation, I want to modulate to the outdoor temperature. For this one here, we're picking fixed set point. Next thing it's going to ask you is, what do you want that fixed set point to be? Make sure if you're doing this, you go through this, because we're defaulted at 165, like all our boilers have been since day one coming into Europe, because that is code in Germany. They're not to exceed 165. Here, we're not really supposed to exceed 180, but that's to make the boilers more efficient. So that means that they want to make the houses more efficient. So they designed the house to be heated with 165, which we all can do, because when we look at even if we're doing baseboard, if you take anybody's baseboard chart and look at their temperature chart, if we're sizing out a house, why not? We have been trained for years to be 0 outside at 180 degrees. Well, we can do 0 outside at 165 degrees. It means a little more heating elements or high output, but more fuel savings. Just imagine paying 3 times more for your fuel bill that you got already, times that times 3, and that's what they're paying in Europe. So they got to do everything possible to get their boilers more efficient. So if you're doing a fixed set point, I always like to bring that up. Our boilers are all come defaulted at 165, even on the heating curves as well. 1.4 is 165. Next thing it's going to ask you is pick a pump output. If you're doing, say, zone control output, and you don't want to use our relays inside our boiler, you're going to put no output, and it's just going to send an end switch over to the boiler, and your pumps and your zone control are going to do all the pumping around your system, because this boiler does not need primary, secondary. If you are going to use the relays in the boiler, which you can have on this boiler 3 pumps into it, controlled for your system side, not the boiler side, system side. First one it's going to ask you is pick that 2820 output. So for heating circuit 1, we're picking a fixed set point, we're setting our temperature, and now if we're going to have our boiler control the pump going out to your system, we're going to pick, say, the 2820 output. Once you hit OK on that, you're going to go right into setting up heating circuit 2. For this example here, we'll do a weather compensated. Once you do the weather compensated, we click OK on that. Next thing it's going to ask you to do is set up your heating curves. So it goes right, you don't have to go looking for it anymore like with the older control. You had to go to program everything through the control itself, and then go look for heating curves. Once you make these adjustments, you can go to those points and make readjustments, and it's not really hard to get to. So with this one here, you set your heating curve, set your slope and shift while you're here. Remember that slope and shift. Once you do that, next thing it's going to ask you is pick your pump for that output. And you can add an AM1 module, which will allow for 2 more pumps as well, in addition to the ones that you already have in the boiler. So if you had five zones, you could get an AM1 module and handle all your pumps. Excuse me. So now you can see once you do pick a zone circuit controls, ZC1 is in the left-hand corner here. which we're looking at when we're looking at the screen now. This is the screen of the boiler. It means that we're in the heating mode because that's a radiator here. Our pump is running. Our selected temperature that we, fixed set point that we chose is showing here in the screen. Flame is on and we're at 72% of our firing rate there. As well as our boiler temperature is going to be here at the bottom of the screen. Right now she's at 140 degrees. That's for a fixed set point. Excuse me. We're doing outdoor temperature. Your screen's going to look a little different. So you're going to still have your radiator in the corner here with your pump on. Now it's going to show your outdoor temperature because we're doing outdoor temperature. So now you can see our current outdoor temperature and our operating temperature where we should be with our actual boiler temperature here. And as you can see, boiler percentage, about 54% of your firing rate there. So if you do want to see what your zone circuits are doing, you're going to go into information and then click on zone circuit 1. And then you can see what the actuals and the set points are for each zone circuit that you have hooked up. This one here is showing you the older style. So now you see the house. And if you got up here, if you're doing domestic and heating, you're going to have a radiator and a faucet. And if you're doing just domestic only, you would have a faucet in there. So with this one here, you can see that it's in daytime operation. If you were in nighttime setback mode, you would have a moon in here. We're also showing our outdoor temperature, what's going on outside of the house. And this is what we have our actual set point temperature to. So accessing some of your service menus here, we're going to press OK and the menu button for about 5 seconds. So the ones with the 3 lines and OK, so you're going to press and hold those both at the same time. Once you do that, you're going to see service come up at the top. You'll see coding level 1. Here's where you would access your fault history and then your service functions. Once we get into service functions, you have another step ladder diagram here or a flow chart. The first one is diagnosis. So this is where you're going to go in and see all your actuals and set points to make sure that they're all to be set to where they're supposed to be. The neat one is the actuator tests. You can get the boiler to fire and high and low fire here. Check all your pump outputs. Everything is tested here. So once we click OK on service function, we would go into this other sub menu here. Once we get into that service menu, that's where you're going to go and reset up your startup wizard. So say you made a mistake in setting up right from the beginning and you want to start like you just took it out of the box. Remember, you're going to press OK and the menu button for about 5 seconds and get into that service function in service menu. And then scroll down to service functions, hit OK on that. Get the sub menu up and then scroll down. It's going to be after putting, there's one missing here. There should be putting your boiler into multi-boilers here as well. So if you would put this boiler into a multi-boiler, which this boiler can do multiples of, you can cascade this boiler and have it communicate to up to 8 boilers. You just can't common vent with these yet, and I'm pretty sure they're getting that approved. I think it was approved in Canada, just not in the US quite yet. So you can cascade these boilers and have multiples of these boilers. Actuator tests. So if you want to do any type of testing of your relays or having the boiler go into low fire, or high fire, once you get into that service menu, click OK on the actuator test. and this is what's going to come up. And it starts with all actuators off. As you hit the down arrow and you click on the down arrow and it highlights this here, it automatically starts whatever you're on. The first thing that's going to come on is a base load. So that means it's going to put it in low fire here. And the boiler will run at low fire. So that's where you're going to do your low fire test to make sure your COs and your O2s are proper. If you want to go into high fire, full load, once you click the arrow down again, it automatically fires it into high fire. If you want to check any of your pump outputs, you click on that and then go over to your relay, see if you're getting power. So it's a nice little troubleshooting area as well if you want to test to make sure everything's working. Of course, if you're getting power to that pump, then it might be your pump might have an issue. At least you can check the relay and then check your pump. To get into coding level 2, you're going to press OK in the menu first. Once you do that, the service menu will come up. As soon as that comes up, you're going to press OK and then that return arrow at the very top for another 5 seconds. And now, as you can see, coding level 2 will come up here. And this is where you're going to come and make all your coding changes on your boiler. If it tells you to make coding changes in general, you're going to click OK on general. If it tells you to make changes in your boiler, you're going to go into your boiler group and make your changes. Or domestic, if you want to make changes on your domestic, or say you put the number 5 sensor in there and you don't want it. You're going to go into here and take it out. You'll go to that, or you can even go into general on 00 and make it so it doesn't have domestic. General 00 is what type of heating system you have. And we'll cover that in a sec. So 00, that's exactly what we were just talking about. 00 in your manual, what that is say, the way I always look at it is if I have an even number on this side here, I know I have domestic hooked to the boiler. So if you had a 1 here, let's say, that would be one heating system, one heating circuit, high temp with no domestic. With 2 here, just because I know off the top of my head, that'd be one high temperature system with domestic. So anytime you have an odd number here, you could go through up to 6 or higher. If you put our mixing valves to the boiler here, that's going to add automatically because everything's auto recognized. So as soon as you plug our mixing valves or outdoor sensor or even your domestic sensor, it's auto recognized and will change as 00. But if you want to take that domestic sensor out here, it's going to be an odd number if you don't want domestic. Same thing with your low loss header sensor. You don't need a low loss header sensor with this boiler. You can do primary, secondary with this boiler, but it's not needed. You can get direct connected with this boiler, but if you want to have it operate with the older style way of constant circulation, you're going to put a low loss header sensor on there. If you put it on there and you don't want it because it does come with the boiler, it's now going to be looking for that. So you're going to go in there and 0 is a default, and then 1, you're going to take it out and change it. As well as making any coding changes for like your propane, from natural gas to propane. There is a code and a thing that you have to follow. And any of this stuff here on the propane change that I'm talking about, if you can't find it in your manual, it's always stuck on the inside of the cover on this boiler here, how to change from natural gas to propane. But you have to get into coding level 2, general. Then you're going to go to this address 11. Address 11, the way I always describe it, is it's a lock. It keeps you from getting to address 82 to switch it from propane, from natural gas to propane. So it's defaulted as a 0. So when you get into general, what it's going to say is when you click OK, that 0 is going to become highlighted, and you're going to put a 9 in here. 9 is your password. Once you do that 9, hit OK, it's now going to allow you to go to that 82 and make that propane change. You'll see this coming up shortly. For people out west, if you're above 10,000 feet, there is an altitude change as well, but that's usually with a coding card. So I cut this out of the manual because I was getting questions on your 00. So this just helps me break it down for you better. So each time you add, say, like your outdoor sensor or your domestic to it, or you can see the number will change for you. So now you can see here with this here, we got one heating circuit with a mixing valve on heating circuit 2 with no domestic. So remember, odd number, no domestic. Even number, domestic. So let's look at that number 2 here. One heating circuit without a mixing valve on heating circuit 1 with domestic. So as you can see, it says right on here, code is adjusted automatically. So as soon as you plug in that domestic sensor, this number will change. As soon as you put in our mixing valve, that number will change. So if we went down here and say number 5 here, one heating circuit with a mixing valve. I mean, without a mixing valve, heating circuit 1. Just remember, heating circuit 1 is always going to be your hottest temperatures if you're doing constant circulation. And one heating circuit with a mixing valve on heating circuit 2 without domestic. So as you can see, it's an odd number, no domestic. Go to that number 6, we'll see over here with domestic. So just a little helpful tool for you to understand the coding a little more. A lot of this is going to change in the next generation of boilers, so that you might be the last time you're seeing it this way, even though all our boilers have done it this way for quite some time now. Any other coding things that you might want to take a look at that you can do this boiler where it comes up with a service hours. So if say you want to have a little wrench come up and say it's time for the annual maintenance after 100 hours or how many hours you put inside the service hours, it will come up with a little wrench letting Mrs. Jones know that it's time for the maintenance. You can do it in hours, you can do it in months. You can have it display or not display that wrench. The other one I always like to talk about when you're installing these boilers, if you didn't know that these boilers have a fill and vent mode. So it exercises the boiler pumps to come on and help you purge through the boiler. Not so much on the CU3A unless you had a boiler hooked to the boiler if you're doing primary, secondary, but 200s, 100s. Have that fill and help fill the boiler and have the pumps exercise the fill functions with you to help purge the boilers correctly. As well as address 38 in boiler. So as you can see now we're in boiler coding. Prior to this, we were in general. And this one here, we're encoding in boiler. This address 38 in the boiler here, it's just a burner status. It should always be a 0 here. This boiler needs a low water cutoff attached to it. If you went to this address 38 in boiler and you saw, sorry, the number eluded my brain right now, but I think it's a 1. That means that you would have a low water cutoff issue. I'll double check that for you. For some reason right now it's not popping in my head. But you can see issues troubleshooting wise here on address 38 as well as on the 200 as well. So if your pump wasn't working on the 200, you go to this address, you will see a 3 here for a flow issue. So that's not even in the manual. There is a section in the manual that will give you these codes at the very end of the manual. And that's for this address 38 codes that don't show on the fault history. And I always like to put this one up here. If you are doing primary, secondary piping, there is a coding in domestic that you have to let the boiler know that it's either on the boiler side or your primary, secondary side. So your secondary side on your other side of your low loss header or your closely spaced T's. You've got to let it know or it won't work correctly. And that's the same for the 200 as well. If you want to set your domestic maximum temperature higher, you're going to go here. And then your run times as well. There's post purge on the domestic. You can change those times as well. So we're at the end of the programming issues here and questions. see what we talked about here a little bit. Kind of went over your symbols, your pumps, your radiators, your faucets, things of that nature. Went over the correct times, why we want to get those times and dates correct. Troubleshooting, you want to do any time programs. How to get to those service levels. Remember, OK in the menu for coding level 1 service menu. And then to get into coding level 2, OK, and the return arrow for 5 seconds. The steps to get in your fault history. Remember, we're going to go into that coding level 1, go into the service function, and then you'll see your fault history. When you hit OK on your fault history, it's going to say, do you want to display them? And you're going to say OK, and then you'll see all your history of your faults. Your number 1 fault is going to be your newest. Your number 10 fault is going to be your oldest. If there's a new fault that comes in, it replaces your number 1. And different effects of your heating curve and how to use them. So we kind of went over that a little bit.
We do have a question, Jay, before you
Awesome.
move on. If you have an original CU3A without the zone circuits, can I upgrade the boiler to have the zone circuits?
That was funny. I was talking about that this morning. Yes, you can. It's a little bit involved, not really. It's going to cost a little more money than just a control, because you're going to need the interface as well, which is that screen, and a new coding card. So yeah, you can upgrade it to the zone circuit control, as well as on the 200 as well. And if you want to use an end switch with the Vitocrossal, with the older style, you would just do zone circuits and have it close, and then you could go in. There's 3 programming changes that you have to make. I think it's 3A, 3B, and 9D to get it to come on for an end switch on your DE1 contacts. So you can still do it, just a little more involved on that as well.
The second part is, can I add Wi-Fi to the original CU3A without the zone circuits?
You can. So that device did come with it originally with the original boilers. So it should have come with it. It does come with that Wi-Fi device. Unless in the very beginning, I know I was here during the out of that boiler. I'm almost 100% it did come with that function, but it could have came out afterwards. I'll double check that as well. Sorry about that.
All right. And we will be sending out a Q&A to everyone. So the ones that Jay will be checking in on, we will be able to put in that spreadsheet. So you will be able to get the answers that he will check in on. And it looks like that is the last question, Jay, if you want to move on to the service presentation.
Awesome. Great questions, guys. Keep asking them. And if like she said, if I don't know them, and if I can't think of them off the top of my head, because I deal with all the boilers sometimes, everybody gets the answers. So if you didn't even ask the question, you're going to get the answers anyway. So that's the neat thing about asking questions. Everybody's going to get the answers. So now we're going to go into the service and maintenance of the boiler. So now we're going to talk about the service and maintenance of the boiler itself. And you're going to find that I found anyways over the years, and I've serviced, I can say everybody's boiler to this day. I've still have serviced everybody's boiler going back to rotary burners. So you're going to find that the Viessmann's boilers are very, once you learn how to do them, they're pretty simple to service because they orient them for their servicemen. So their guys can get in and out of their boilers quicker in Germany and move on to the next one. So they make it service friendly. Even the oil burners, if you've never seen their oil burners, I've had one in my house. And once I learned how to work on it and saw how easy it was, easiest burner out there to service and service it easily without disturbing everything on it. So for these here, we're going to talk about the proper cleaning techniques on this boiler here. recommend cleaning tools, chemicals, some maintenance tips, as well as making sure that we don't have condensate backups. This boiler here would be a little difficult to fill it up with condensate, but it can happen. And I see it more in the 200s. That was probably the #1 call that I seen in tech support was improperly installed condensate. The water will back right up inside the heat exchanger and actually go right up to the flame sensor and short it out. So it's proper to have an air gap and as well as to change your pellets on a yearly basis. So let's talk about the service and maintenance. You can find all these recommendations and things that I'm going to go over in the manuals. And if the manuals are not in on the site, we have what they call pro resources, where you can get all the manuals for all our different boilers. And then they even have a historical section. So if you've never worked on the oil stuff, and you need information, there's information in the historical end on our older boilers as well, even the atmospheric ones. They show that we do sell this toolkit. It works on all our boilers. It's a nice handy tool. The most important thing in this whole tool thing is that screwdriver. It's an adjustable length, and it allows you to get to everything in the boilers. If not, most of them are all common tools that you can buy anywhere. My son recently bought some torque. It's a torque screwdriver he bought online that you can change. It came with all these different tips as well, and with a torque. So if you are into torquing things back to their torque specs, and it was fairly inexpensive. Talking about the manual just for a second here, because I always like to point out these warnings, these cautions, and the important things. And why is it important? There's a lot of little helpful hints, important wise. There's cautions, do it this way, don't do it that way. And then warnings is, and I always point this out because it's our license on the line. So could result in loss of life, serious injuries. So that's why you see all these little labels in here. And I always like to talk about, to me, the most important thing is to review the manual. I found that the more reading I do, sometimes the more trouble I get into, but what I find is it does help me get out of jams a lot of times, believe it or not. And the other thing is if I don't know, we can call tech support, or if the manual can't help us, we can call tech support. So if you do get into trouble and you need to call tech support, here's your tech support number here. And they now require that you do call in with the boiler model number. So this boiler does come in the 4 sizes, the 94,000 BTU up to the 199. So they're going to need to know that you're working on a Vitocrossal CU3A 94,000, whatever. And you're going to need that boiler serial number here. What I like to say about that is, say you go out there, you do your work, they tell you to go out there, change this part, and then you have to go get the part, and something happens where that guy gets sick, and then somebody else has to go there in his place. The neat thing about when you do that is when you call back to the tech support number, and they're going to give you a case number with this boiler. So I always told guys to write that case number on the inside of the cover of the boiler. So that stays with that boiler for the rest of its life. So anytime you call tech support, anything that happens with that boiler gets all put into one location. And then it will, whatever they told you to do, or if you sent pictures in or whatever it may be, all gets put into that case. So it gives you a case history of like we used to fill out the cards on the side of the boilers that I changed this, this, and that. So it's just a nice little helpful tool as well. And it also registers that boiler as well. So it registers it. So if there's ever any issues, they know where that boiler is and they can reach out to whoever. But to remove that cover right there, there's one screw in the middle of the cover. You're going to remove that one screw. So if you want to add the fault code checker or pro resources to your home screen on your phone, we threw this up here just to do it. I didn't just put the fault code checker, because if you go on there, it's going to show you just how to put the fault code checker on. I saved the whole pro resources as a favorite on my phone. That way it gave me all my historical documents, my fault code checker, my current manuals. If you're doing any commercial, it's all commercial stuff in there as well. So it's pretty neat. So this is just a quick a video on how to do that.
Today we're going to discuss how to create a shortcut for the Viessmann fault code checker on your phone's home screen. First thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and open up your browser. Type in Viessmann-us.com. Next, you'll open up the menu. Select Pro Resources. Once the Pro Resources page opens up, you'll click on Fault Code Checker. That'll open up a new window where you have to scroll down and acknowledge that you are a licensed contractor. Once that page opens up, you can go ahead and click on the Send To button or the Share button. You'll scroll down and you'll select Add to Home Screen. You can then rename it or just save it and add it to your home screen as is.
So just a quick little video to show you how to do it if you didn't know that it was there. And it does come in handy if you do get any of our faults. And I've done a bunch of videos on the 100. I'm working on the 200s now, so you can go on our website and see those, how to fix those problems and how to look it up as well. So it's pretty neat, very helpful tool. And even any of the troubleshooting classes, it's helping you learn if you have newer guys on how to use an electric meter or how to use a manometer, because with these new equipments, not just with our boiler, these are tools that are going to bring you to the front of the leading of the industry in having the proper tools to set these boilers up. So normally when we have our live training, hopefully we're looking down the tunnel here and we're starting to see some lights with what's going on. And we can have you guys come to our live facility and work. Everybody gets a boiler. We have actually 3 of these boilers set up where you can come in and work on them and service them, learn how to clean them and put hands on. To me, that's the best way to learn. And our academy in the last couple of years have grown leaps and bounds for that. And we're constantly upgrading. And there's nothing better to me than hands-on training to get all, to help me anyways, sink in my brain. So this is normally a little thing for me to remind myself when we go out to the lab to make sure I shut the gas and power off. But I jokingly say that because how many of us have hit the switch or forgot to hit the switch? So it's always just a good safety first. The other thing, as being an owner of my own company and been managers and general managers of large companies, guys tend to take a look at the heating system they're going to clean and the heating system only. So they just tend to look at the boiler, go there, do their annual maintenance, and then don't take a good broad picture of what's going on with your heating system. And just remember, we are the last guys there. And for some strange reason, if they see a little drip somewhere and we don't say it to them, remember, we're the last ones there. We must have created it. So when you're looking at the boiler, take a look at the whole picture of your heating system. This is a way we generate more money for your company as well. So it promotes good business. And so if you do see an issue or a problem, make sure you bring it to the homeowner's attention. Hey, I can fix that now. If you're doing flat rate billing, here's your price. Or if you want, I can call my office and get a price for you to fix that, or we can set up an appointment. But don't just look at the boiler, because a lot of causes to downfalls of boilers are leaking high vents and things to that nature, as things get leaking. And so I don't know if they don't want to go be the last one to work on it, but yeah, this is how things last. All right. So when we get started, things that you want to do is, once you take the cover off, we want to kind of, if you have plastic bags, when we pull a burner off, you can cover it when we start to spray water in there. Little helpful tools like that, or change and hang it on your controls below to make sure you're not getting water everywhere or on things that might fry. And remember, things were working when you got there, but we do a cleaning, and then the next thing you know, thing won't fire. So just be careful with water. These are the things that we will take a look at while we're doing our annual maintenance, and we're going to go through it step by step here. So the other thing is, remember, no metal brushes on the heat exchanger itself. It is a stainless steel heat exchanger, but we don't want to scrape it and scratch it. You'll take that protective coating off that stainless steel, and you might have issues down the road. So there's that one screw. So once you take that one screw out from the top here, you're going to lift the cover up and off. There's some pins on down the below here where they sit on. So you're going to just lift them off those pins on the bottom there. Once we have the cover off, the first thing we're going to do is loosen that nut on our gas valve once we shut our main gas valve off, right? Now we'll know right away if we didn't shut that gas off there. That's for sure. So once we shut the gas off, we'll loosen that nut. And remember, there is a little fiber washer inside there. It normally stays on the new installation. On the first time, it's going to either stick on your gas valve or on the inside of that nut. But there is a fiber washer in there, just to make sure it doesn't get ripped or you don't drop it out of there. You're going to remove the snorkel below. And the other thing too is, I always like to bring up, when these first came to the US, we're probably one of the only ones that really actually sidewall vent. Germany, they go all up through the roofs because they have roof chimney inspectors that inspect their efficiency of their boilers from the venting, believe it or not. That's why a lot of these boilers have override switches, so they can go up there and do an efficiency test on the boiler to make sure it's meeting their standards. If not, they red tag you and you have to fix it or upgrade the heating system within so much time. But why I'm saying that is, when they first came in here, we had a few issues with these boilers, and we brought it right to their attention right away. And what was happening was that hose here was filling up with water on the bottom underneath the boiler itself. And what was happening was there was no check valve inside here. So they all have check valves inside that snorkel now. If you have the older version, you might not have that snorkel. And if you're seeing that, then they'll send that out to you at no charge, that flapper that's inside here. Pretty much all of those have been taken care of now. But I always bring that up because the neat thing was, when that happened, I was actually in Germany, and I watched them make the very first one with a 3D printer. It was pretty fascinating to see if you've never seen that happen before. I thought that was pretty cool. So next thing we're going to do is go to our fan. And as you can see, all our plugs are wired. So here, going to our fan is our 100 plug. That's the power to the fan. So we're going to remove that plug there. Right next to it is the 100A, which is our communication to our fan. That's what's telling that fan how to ramp up and down. Remember that this boiler has the Lambda Pro technology on it. So it's pretty much self-adjusting and as well as the gas valve. So you have communication to your fan as well as to your gas valve on this boiler for that Lambda Pro technology. Just remember, there is a little clip on that 100A. It's on the other side here. So you kind of got to get your fingernail in there or a small screwdriver and lift the clip out to pull that wire out. A lot of times they'll break pretty easy if you're just yanking on that wire. So just a little helpful hint, there is a little clip to hold that, locks that plug on. Next thing we're going to go to is our plug 35 going to our gas valve. And as you can see, there's a little clip on that as well. So you're just going to kind of push down on that clip and it unlocks and you're going to pull that plug right off. The 190 is our communication to the gas valve. And that's what's telling how much of that valve to open and close according to how much fire you need in the gas valve. Remember, it's a negative gas valve as well. We're also going to remove a flame sensor boot. Our igniter wires off our transformer. And then so that's going to be your power to your transformer, your communication, because with Lambda Pro, we can get a flame sensor reading to our control, which is telling the gas valve and the fan how much to ramp up and down through the flame sensors. So that's what's doing that, is that COM wire here. Power to the transformer is here. And then lastly, we're going to take off that ground wire. And remember, that ground wire is important to get good flame sensor readings, so make sure that that gets back, put back into the right place. And as you can see, where that plugs onto, you just pull that spade connector off. And then that's actually a handle once we, I like to point that out when we go to pull the burner off. So we're going to go around, we're going to take off the 4 nuts. In the toolkit, it has the nut driver for this as well. Once we do that, we're going to grab that handle and pull it straight back. And then with the eyelets, let me go back here. So with these eyelets, once you pull this off, there's going to be 4 eyelets on here. It allows you to hang that burner. You'll see a bracket right here where you can hang that eyelet, and then below it slides in the bottom one. So now you can hang the burner right on the boiler itself, so it's out of your way. So now you can take a look at your electrodes while it's hanging there. You can take a look at your flame sensor, as well as on the other side to take a look, inspect your burner mesh, and now you're there. So this is the point where you might want to either cover it with a plastic bag before you go to wash the boiler down. And then remember, here's your controls down here as well. So just be careful with the water you're spraying. I actually use like a little battery operated pump sprayer as well with the chemical in it. And then to rinse it out, it's just a little small hose or a pump sprayer. So while we have that burner out, we can inspect our electrode settings. And for our electrode settings, here's our electrodes here. We want to make sure that we have a 6 millimeter from our burner mesh to the bend of our electrodes. And as you can see here, it gives you a tolerance of plus 0.8. Sometimes you'll see a minus here. The minus has nothing, so that's only giving you a tolerance to go out or just a little bit. Over here, you can see there is a plus or minus on the flame sensor. So there's a flame sensor and electrodes. The flame sensor is a bent rod already, so it's concave for that the burner head. But as you can see, it gives you a plus or a minus here, so you can go forward or back a millimeter. Definitely want to inspect that door gasket if you have had it on and off. I find with all the classes we've given on this boiler, after a while, some guys will put it in cockeyed and it will actually tear the gasket. So you want to inspect the gaskets. If you do it right, the gaskets should last a long time. And we pull these burners apart hundreds of times. Some of them are all the original ones. But I've noticed on a couple where they get put in crooked, they pinch. So that's part of it. It's just, it will slide over a lip. Pretty easy to replace as well. So as you can see, everything's here. Next thing, you want to inspect that fibrous material here. It's a vermiculite material, and it's actually all our target walls, this doesn't have a target wall, but our front burner part here is a vermiculite. And even on our 200s, it has it as well, the 100s. It's all pressed together with like a potato starch. So if this stuff gets wet, it starts to deteriorate and fall apart. So that's why you want to inspect. And if you are getting water buildups, it's a telltale sign. You'll get a white watermark on the 300 in the front, and then on the 200s, usually on the target walls, on the smaller ones in the back or in the front. Neat thing with Viessmann's, I always like to say that everything is replaceable, and you can fix everything on the boiler. So at this point here, we're about halfway of the service and maintenance.
We do have a couple questions, Jay. The first one is, what's the reason for keeping the burner head dry?
The burner head dry is that mesh. It's a stainless steel mesh, and if behind that mesh there's actually another stainless steel, like a cylinder, almost looks like a colander that you do your pasta with, is behind that stainless steel mesh. So if you get water inside that mesh and you fire the boiler, the mesh will flash, that water will flash the steam very rapidly. It will actually pop the mesh right off the burner tube. So that's why you want to make sure that that burner mesh stays dry when it's firing. Not so much on this burner here, on the large commercial ones. So we see that where guys wash the burner tube and then don't dry it. And then there's a major issue there, because those tubes we're talking, almost as much as these boilers. Yeah, if you do wash these burner meshes, because they are dirty, you got to make sure they're completely dried off, or you're going to ruin your mesh.
We have one more question. I've had to bend the brand new flame electrodes by hand when replacing them, as they have been far out of the spec range if installed as is. Is that typical?
Not that I've seen. That's kind of odd, because I do have I had put maybe about 20 of these in, and I'm a promoter of changing electrodes. Maybe after every 2 years, whether they need it or not, I change them. But yeah, they're usually packaged pretty well, and the boxes are sealed. But if you had to do that, as long as they're new, I would bend them. But if they're the already been fired, the used ones, I wouldn't recommend that unless you have another set on your truck, because they get brittle. But if you're finding that, I'll bring that up to quality control.
All right, that is the last question for now.
Right, awesome. Yeah, like I was saying, you do not want to clean those flame sensors with any metal brushes or anything like something very fine. I always use like a dollar bill, something that's not abrasive at all. If it's pitted or anything like that, just replace it. Save yourself a headache in the middle of the winter or middle of the night, because we know when these come in, they come in at the worst opportune times. So if anything, the neat thing about this that we're talking about, they're working on it as we speak, a parts kit for these boilers. So each boiler will have a small little parts kit. So that's pretty nifty. They should be sending out some type of survey, whether you're interested in that. So if we get any feedback, or even if you want to type that in, that you're interested in that now, we're just trying to get some feedback on that, whether it would be worth it or not. It's not going to be a lot of parts like the original ones I have in my house. I think I paid like $1,800. It has 2 gas valves in there. It has a fan. It has all kinds of stuff. And I had 2 of them for the older boilers. And half the stuff is still in there, believe it or not. Most of it. I think the most things I've changed out of those kits that I have are electrodes. So basic parts. So here might be some tools that you might want to bring with you. I throw my Soot Master vacuum up there just because I've been in the industry all my life. So what I normally do is, if there's a little buildup in there, I vacuum out crumbs. And with this stuff here, you'll be fine with a little shop vac, because it's not like a fine soot. Unless you come up to that, then you want to use a Soot Master. inside of the boiler, nothing more than these are toilet brushes or brushes, scrub brushes, soft bristles. You'll find if you do clean the flame sensor with anything abrasive, you go back there the following year, you're going to find that it's going to look like barnacles on them. And so you'll know that the guy the prior year used something very abrasive and took the protective coating off the flame sensor. This is the cleaning material that they do recommend. This is right out of our manual here. I have not been able to find that Antox 75E. I think that's more of a European solution, or maybe even our counterparts in Canada. But the CitraServe 3050 or 77, I use that on a regular basis. It does work. It works on our stainless steel. It works on any stainless steel. So if you're working on others, even your gas grill, stainless steel, it actually cleans it and puts a new pacification on the metal. So it puts a new protective coat on the metal. So if you did scratch the boiler, you spray this on there and it repacifies the metal to help protect it. And it works good on gas grills as well. Just saying. You can follow their recommendations. So the 3050 is a concentrate and the 77 is already diluted. So you can get the CitraServe so you can dilute it. I think they sell it in gallon, 5 gallons, and I do the commercial as well. So you can actually buy it in 55-gallon drums and then just dilute it yourself. And or you can get it in small, I think they're 12-ounce spray bottles. We don't sell this stuff, so it's something that you buy it from your supply house. That's already pre-mixed, and so I used to buy a case of that for the guys, and they would keep that in the truck for service. So they recommend that you spray it, you let it sit for a few minutes, and then once you do that, just spray it a little bit, and then scrub it in, and then let it sit some more, and then rinse it right out with regular water. And you'll find it will take the yellow, that green out. So it works really well. So now we got that door open. And by the way, you can tell what size the boiler is by looking at each one of these openings here. It will tell you how many BTU boiler you have by looking at each section. These brushes here, you can try to get them in there, but this is a cross-pattern heat exchanger. So it's like an oil boiler with pins in it, but tighter. So if you think you can get a brush in there through a cross one, I wouldn't recommend it. It doesn't show it in the manual as well. It does show you jetting the water out with a hose. If you're flushing out your boiler, what I do is I take the hose off going to my neutralizer and either put that in a bucket or in a floor drain. So I'm not flushing all that stuff through the boiler into my condensate neutralizer. And if you do, you're gonna replace it or clean it anyway. So either way, we wanna get to that neutralizer and check it out. A lot of times it looks like there's nothing wrong with it, but take a look at it. They're probably solid as a brick. To me, that's a part of your annual maintenance, is to take a look at those pellets, because what happens is when they get all stuck together like that, if you ever done plumbing and done leach fields or anything like that, if you get a leach field that's all clogged, the water can't get through those stones. So it starts to find other avenues to leach out. Same thing with this. If the pellets are all stuck together, the water's just going to flow over the top of those pellets out the other side and not be neutralized. And so if you're putting it into somebody's drain or into somebody's septic system, not good. So this should be part of your annual maintenance, is taking a look at those pellets. Clean the trap out. I normally pull it right out. It's pretty easy to do. You're just going to pull the hose coming from the boiler off the top, and then there's one little. I'm sorry. On the bottom of this boiler here, we're just going to unscrew the cup. It's pretty simple on this boiler. So you get down, and you'll see it's coming up here. So as you can see, right at the very bottom of the boiler is your condensate trap. So you do not have to add another trap to this boiler. That's what was one of the issues was with all the boilers, is double trapping. This is a trap in itself. And then this cup on the bottom unscrews, and you'll clean out the stuff in the bottom of that cup, right out of the cup there itself. If you want to clean the whole condensate collector, there's 2 nuts on either side, and you can pull the whole pan down and clean that out as well. And if you've installed this and you've used rubber hose on this, just a little helpful tip, I've done it many, many times, is PVC will slide right over the top of this. You don't even have to glue it in. So if you want to come out hard pipe right out of the back, and sometimes I've had to drill holes in the side to get my neutral, the condensate to come out the other way, you can do that as well. So just a little helpful hint. Slide a piece of 3/4 inch PVC right over the top. It locks it because it's wedged. You won't get any leaks. Just making sure that you are, if you're doing into a trap or into a PVC drain line, or even in you want to have an air gap. Make sure you have some type of air gap in there so the condensate flows out of the boiler into the neutralizer or into the pump. They have a lot of those new pumps now that have the neutralizers built right into them. My recommendation, if you haven't installed this boiler before, you're going to get a low profile pump and neutralizer, because this is pretty low to the ground. If you're going to go into our neutralizer and then into a pump, it's not going to work unless you put the boiler up on blocks. So the very first one I did that, I found that out. So either put it on blocks or get the low profile pump and neutralizer, and you won't have any issues installing that stuff. Just looking at your pH levels, if you didn't know what's coming out of the boilers, our boilers, anybody's boiler, this condensates are about, you're going to see it's about, I've seen them at 3, 2.5, 3.5. So you can see we get pretty acidic down at these lower numbers. I think Coke is over here somewhere. But it will do damage. I've seen the outcomes of traps on the slop sinks, floor drains, and even concrete outside the building gotten eaten away. I've seen trenches eaten in floors. So this stuff does get acidic. And when I first started this, nobody knew about neutralizers and all of that. So I was guilty, but I also blame the people that were training us weren't talking about any type of neutralization 25 years ago, or if you did, you had to make your own. So it's important in nowadays to get this done, especially if you're dumping it into a septic system. It will kill all the bacteria in your leach field and in your sewer and septic. So just these are a couple ones that we did sell. These are the original ones here. So I took this picture in our lab, and then now you can see what happens to these pellets with the scum and stuff inside the water. It will start to build up around these pellets, and then the water just comes in and runs out. This is our newer one here. The pellets come in a mesh bag. So once you change, if you want to change that, you just bring the mesh bag with you and exchange the mesh bag. Just take the mesh bag, throw it away. With our older ones, you used to take them out and rinse them out, break them up, loosen them up, put them back in, and then just replace what's missing. And you had to do that all through that little hole here. And that's one I have in my house. So you can see all these pellets come out through here. To do your flue gas test port is on the back of the boiler. It's like a plastic bolt that threads right in. So you remove that if you want to do your efficiency combustion test, right on the back of the boiler. And I do recommend that. And once you do put everything together, a simple quick check is if you have a mirror, just run a mirror around your gaskets. If there's any type of leak, that mirror is going to fog up really quick. So just a really quick way of testing to make sure that you got the door gaskets on right, your flue collars are on right. I've seen these pull out and you can't see because the connector's on the back side here. The homeowner actually put a box right on top here and pushed it not out of here because there's lock clips on there, but out of the back side. Here's where we want to get our ranges in our CO2s, anywhere from 7.6 to 9.6 on high fire, low fire 7.6 to 9.6 on natural gas, and on LP 9.0 to 11.3 on high and low fire. And then there's your O2 ranges as well. Just make sure when you do first start this boiler up, you don't throw your analyzer right in there. Give it a few minutes to warm up, because this goes through Lambda Pro. And if you haven't been in any of our, my Lambda Pro classes about what Lambda Pro does on initial startup, your meter will go right through the roof, because with Lambda Pro, we check at very lean and very rich before we put it back to where we figured out where the perfect combustion is. So it's doing a test in the initial startup to make sure that it's set up for the perfect combustion. And remember, we'll go into that, we talked about this in the control programming. We'll go into the actuator test. We'll put it into base load, check it at low fire, and then remember, just hit that down arrow and go into high fire. And then just make sure that you're in the readings that you should be. As long as you're within the scale, in between here, you're good to go. If you want to check for cross-contamination, sometimes I had the guys go into the starter flapper. This is a different flapper than the one I was talking about earlier. This is only for startup flapper. This flapper relieves any pressure when the burner starts, so it gives a nice, quiet, smooth start. If you haven't heard these boilers run, they're very, very quiet boiler, very quiet. Low fire, you don't even know this boiler is running. Even in high fire, it's very hard to tell. But if you want to check for cross-contamination, you can throw your analyzer inside here and see what we're sucking into the house with, because this is direct connected to the burner. Excuse me. So our air intake is here going outside, so we can see if we're getting any cross-contamination in there. If not, I always tell guys to put their analyzer in the bottom of the boiler, put the cover back on, and let's see what the readings are. And then see if we're getting any cross-contamination, because that could be your gaskets here or your flue collar in the back of the boiler. So we'll get a reading with the and no false reading without the cover on. And this, as I always found this kind of funny, because nowadays it's really hard to get all your maintenance in, because we're too busy either installing or fixing other people's messes. So the thing here to say is, we do have that program on the boiler. They can have that go to their phone, so that the homeowner can schedule, because a lot of times when I was a service manager, I had to call everybody and set up the whole week or 2 weeks of calling people every single day to get, 4 of these per person. If you had 20 or 40 people, it's a lot of work just to schedule the maintenance. So if we have a little wrench that comes up and you tell a homeowner, hey, when that wrench comes up, it's nothing to worry about. It's just time to schedule your annual maintenance. But sometimes that works against us, because some people panic and think that that has to be done immediately. Talk about what we went over today in today's class. And as you're typing in your questions, if you need to. We went over how to remove the burner. Remember, there's only 4 nuts. I went over all the different wires to pull off. And then you'll be able to rewatch this as well on what, and if you ever had to go out in the field and you wanted to watch this and see how it's done before you go to do it, you can do that and just go to our website. The recommended chemicals, the citrus service, what I recommend, no CLR, no simple green, none of those chemicals are allowed in our boiler. It's not what they do, it's the afterburn. That's pretty much sort of like why we don't allow PVC as a vent pipe, only for fresh air. It's what happens to the PVC once the temperatures start to break down the PVC, the chlorides start to leach out of the PVC back into your boiler and start to do damage. So that's why Viessmann doesn't recommend PVC on their exhaust. Remember the maintenance tips for the condensate backup is clean your condensate neutralizer, your traps. Make sure you're not double trapping them or put them into a tight fitting to where they hold a vacuum. The way I always used to explain that a vacuum over the phone is it's like when you're a kid used to take a straw and you sucked on it, you put your finger over the straw and wow, you could hold all the fluid in the straw. Well, that's basically what's happening here. It's holding a vacuum. And so your fluids are not draining out of the boiler, so they just continue to build up inside the boiler. This boiler here takes quite a bit of condensate to build up in here, but in the 200s, it doesn't take long at all for them as well. But it will happen in this boiler as well. Sorry about that.
All right, we do have 2 questions, Jay. The first one is, we've used sandcloth and Marycloth for many years to clean flame rods and flame sensors. Is there something different with Viessmann's?
Yeah, it's not so, emery cloth is very, if you use a very, very fine emery cloth, but a lot of times if you're using anything like a scouring pad, those green scouring pads, even that's too abrasive. It will start to actually wear off the protective coat, and you'll find the following year you definitely have to replace those. So like I was saying, here in Massachusetts, I use the dollar bill, but when I train out in California, they use $100 bill. I guess it gets it cleaner. But no, something fine like that dollar bill, it's very fine. And if you're finding that if there's a lot of buildup on there, you might be just better off replacing them if you're carrying them on your truck and do your maintenance. So to me, it's like even with the oil for years, I was adamant on making sure that all my burner tips had points on the electrodes. And I could tell you that it cut way down on my callbacks by just either filing them or changing the electrodes on an annual maintenance call. So same thing with these electrodes, by replacing them or making sure they're clean, less likely to have problems throughout the year.
All right, and our last question for today. Do you have any recommendations as to what to look for when you have good fresh air intake and inlet gas pressures within spec, but the CO2 and O2 are out of range?
Depending on your fuel quality, I found that to be an issue as well, as when we're setting these up, temperatures change and the quality. That's why the Lambda Pro should be taking over and making these adjustments. So that's why I say make sure you're not testing it within like the first 80 seconds of the startup. I think I read in the manual, it says not to put your analyzer in there until it clears itself out. The other thing too is what I found over years with anybody's boiler, including mine here in my house, was the houses today are built so tight. And what I found, if the flappers weren't installed, when the house comes to take a deep breath, because we just sucked out all the air out of the house, it's taking it back through your flue and back in through the fresh air and coming out through the boiler. So check those flappers on the, that should be part of your annual maintenance, especially on the 100s, the 200s, and the 300s every couple of years. Even mine, the 100s, I had to get the flapper approved because on the WB1B, it was not installed in those boilers, and my house was extremely tight. That when I shut the boiler down, flue gases were coming into the house. So I had to get that approved, the flapper, but I noticed on every couple of years, they get gummy and sticky. So that should be part of your annual maintenance, checking those flappers inside, making sure they're not sticking as well.
All right, that is the last question, Jay.
Well, I hope to answered your questions. If not, like I said, I'll be writing those all out. For the ones that I couldn't remember, I will put those in, but everybody's going to get those questions. Everybody will see those answers as well. I appreciate questions because it keeps me on my toes as well. As you can see, sometimes as I get older, I think all the information is pushing out all the old information with new stuff. So I appreciate you all coming and joining us here today at the Viessmann Academy training. Have a great day. Again, if you forget any questions, you'll see here we have our Academy website, and Miranda will take over and go over all that stuff with you. Again, thank you for joining us, and come again, and hope to see you as far as live training. Have a great day.
Thank you, Jay. Just a few reminders, like Jay was saying, if you do have any additional questions, the email for the Academy is on the screen right now. Feel free to email any additional questions you have, and we'll add them to that spreadsheet and get you those answers as soon as possible. We will have a recorded version. It will be in that website right there, the Viessmann-US Academy website. So be sure to check that out in the video library and the upcoming online seminars. And with that being said, that does conclude today's seminar. Thank you for attending and have a wonderful day.
Have a great day, everybody. And we have another one coming up tomorrow if you haven't seen it. Have a great day.